Okay, we're gonna get rolling. Thank you for coming. Thank you guys for coming over Zoom. I'm super pumped. It is my goal, move further away, Chad says. It is my goal to do this at least quarterly. We're all excited about the Open. So that's really the driver in wanting to do this. But we've all done marathons or half marathons, triathlons, Ragnars, competitions. And it's kind of nice to know how our nutrition affects our performance. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But as I started to kind of prepare for that, I really thought you guys need sort of a baseline. You need to know, if you're not working one-on-one with a coach, you kind of need to know what your baseline is and how to figure that out. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Tom, you look so nice. No, you're from work? Come on in. Okay, so if you guys have questions, feel free. Interrupt, it doesn't matter to me. But the first thing we're going to talk about is calories. A calorie is a measurement of energy. A calorie is a calorie is a calorie. So whether it's like 100 calories from strawberries or 100 calories from Twinkies, they really are the same. Now, context matters. Even though calorie is a calorie, context matters. So I want you to think about 1 mile. Okay, 1 mile equals 1 mile. Whether it's on the road, or in the water, or maybe on the beach. But how long it takes to cover that distance really is different, am I right? I mean, we could maybe run a mile on the road, no problem, but to run a mile on the beach might take longer, and to swim a mile, well, maybe, for you, no big deal. For us, a really big deal. Yeah. So context matters, and that's the case with calories. A calorie is a calorie is a calorie, but perhaps you need, let's say, 1,700 calories in one day. If you really want to fill your calories with pizza and cheeseburgers and donuts, that's okay. But for the rest of the day, you might find you're hungry, because those are really calorically dense things, and you're gonna run out of calories real quick. So, context matters. Okay, I have to follow my notes, otherwise I will miss stuff. Ultimately, the thing that I do really want to emphasize is there's sort of this, and you probably could care less, but as a nutrition coach, there's this big trend about good foods versus bad foods. You know, some people feel like, well, if it's not a clean food, we shouldn't be eating it. And ultimately, with that context, food is food. It's all fuel. Again, if you're eating for health, then what you eat matters. If you're eating for performance, what you eat matters, right? If we're simply eating for fat loss, we can obtain fat loss eating ho-hos and ding-dongs. As long as you're in a calorie deficit, you really can. Are you going to have better health? Questionable, right? Questionable. Okay, so the other thing to keep in mind, again, is satiety, or meaning how full you are throughout the day. If you can fill your calories with fibrous foods that take up, a lot of energy to digest, those things are going to keep you full for a long time. So we are going to talk about what we look at in that regard. So let's talk about sort of a good formula to look at. For you to calculate fat loss calories, take your, take your goal body weight and multiply by 12. I don't have Chad's phone. You might have to do this math for me. So let's say our goal body weight is 150. Can you multiply that by 12 for me?
Guys, randomly you can get it. 1,800.
Okay, so 1,800 calories. Okay, so ultimately, this is the major part of what we should be looking at. So in a day, that person should consume a goal of 1,800 calories. Okay, well, let's give or take, so plus or minus 100 calories. So they could realistically eat 1,600 to 1,900, nope, sorry, 17, bad at math. 1,700 to 1,900 calories and obtain fat loss. That's very, very realistic. Okay, so how do we know? I've been hesitant to kind of talk about people calculating their own calories or their own macros. And the reason is everyone is so different. There's so many formulas that you can Google and you can find online calculators. And a lot of those, they might be accurate, but what they don't know is they don't know your diet history. They don't know your health history. They don't know if you're a diabetic or the things that you've been through from a health perspective. So those things really do matter. So this is a really good rule of thumb, like baseline, but talking with a coach, even just one-on-one, one time to get a realistic idea of where things should be, can be really, really helpful. But this is a good starting place. Okay, so we're looking at goal body weight times 1,800 calories. Let's say we have a substantial amount of weight to lose. Maybe we have 50 pounds to lose. Here's what I would do. I would not make your goal body weight our target in the beginning. I would just subtract 20 pounds. Subtract 20 pounds, take that number. So maybe we're at 200 pounds and our goal body weight is 150. I would go to 180. Take 180, multiply that by 12. For now, that is our calorie goal. Why? Why would I not bite off the big chunk and take it slower?
Small, realistic goals.
Yes, yeah, that's it. It's like our goal for fat loss, we want it to look like this. So it's like we want to lose, we want to kind of reverse a little bit, we want to lose, we want to reverse a little bit, we want to lose. If I just go from here straight to there, that's going to be really, really hard. It's going to be really hard for somebody who clearly has put on the weight from poor diet choices to hit that super aggressive calorie goal. It's much more realistic to make it small and sustainable, okay? So once they reach that goal, once they've lost the 20 pounds, then we set a new goal. Okay, let's subtract another 20, and then we go from there. It's much more realistic, okay? So just take these small segments. The other thing that is important for fat loss, you can lose weight or perform optimally just tracking calories or just looking at calorie intake. You really can. But for ideal performance, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about performing at our best. We should look at protein. Protein is what is going to not only help sustain muscle mass. Typically when you lose fat, you lose muscle. It's just what happens. It is rare that someone loses weight and does not lose muscle. We've had it happen. If they're strength training a good amount and if they're eating enough protein, those are the two keys. So the second most important thing to be looking at is our protein. How do we figure out what that should be? Two ways to figure out what our protein should be. One is your goal body weight times 1. So again, if we take our athlete who goal body weight is 150, they should be eating 150 grams of protein. If we take that out of 1,800 calories, it's a little aggressive, and also it is a challenge for people to eat protein, especially in the beginning. I mean, let's take somebody whose goal body weight is 190. 190 grams of protein is a lot of protein. Eric knows. Yes, it's a lot. It is doable. It is doable. But again, in the words of Mike, let's have some sustainable goals. So what's our option number 2 for calculating protein? Take your total calories. So if we've got 1,800, we're gonna go 1,800. We're gonna multiply that by 30%. So what is that? Chad.
0.3.
Yeah, 0.3. What's the number?
540.
How much? 540? Okay, and will you divide that by 4?
135.
Ah, okay, so we had this is our 150, not our 190. So we had 150 versus 135. 15 grams, it's not substantial. So that's why this is honestly a really ideal way to do it. 135 is probably pretty easy for somebody. I eat 140 grams every day and I rarely supplement. Like I eat real food to hit that number. So it's only 15 grams, but that may be just a little bit more realistic. And what that means is, raise your hand if you love carbs. Hello, holler. Yes, we love carbs. We love CrossFit. CrossFit is a glycolytic sport, so carbohydrates are our friend. What that means is I can take 15 of these grams of protein and I can eat 15 more carbs, which I love. I mean, that's also valuable as well. So that's a good rule of thumb. Goal body weight times 1. So 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight we want to weigh, or total calories times 30%. Why did I divide by 4? Because every gram of protein is 4 calories. That makes sense. The only one that's different is fat. Every gram of fat is 9. It's much more dense. It's much more dense. So if you're eating 135 grams of protein, you're probably only going to be eating 60 to 70 grams of fat. It's much lower because it's twice as calorically dense. Make sense? Okay, do you guys have questions on that? Makes sense? Pretty simple. This is not how I figure out my client's calorie number, just FYI. Okay, if you come to me, there is a much more in-depth process that I look at to figure out your calorie number, but I wanted to give you guys something that's not only accurate, but also simple. Simple. How do you know if you are in a deficit? How do you know if you are in if you want to lose weight, how do you know if it's working? 90 days is really what you need. You need to be consistent with something for 90 days. And in fact, Mike said this about CrossFit. He said, but what was your saying? You said give it 30? 24 hours. Okay, so yeah, and at first I was thinking like a month, and no, you were like, give it that many workouts, which is true. I mean, you need to do something for a consistent and persistent amount of time for you to really know if you love it, if it works, if it's whatever. You know, I mean, people might come in and try one class. Well, how do you really know if you love it? You gotta show up and you gotta be here. And the same is true when it comes to performance and looking at what we're eating for performance or fat loss. Be consistent. So here's what I would say. I would say take your calendar, all right? You've got your calendar, and for every day that you reach your goal, within 100 calories of your goal. So every day that you are within 17 or 19, mark an X. The days that you miss, leave blank. Leave blank. Okay, so after 90 days, you need 72 out of the 90 for you to really know if it's working. For you to really know, am I eating enough calories to support performance? Am I eating in a deficit to support fat loss? 80%. You need to be 80% compliant. And that's true with anything. Maybe you're working with a coach and you feel like, oh, this isn't working. Well, if you're not actually compliant, it's not the plan that's not working. It's you that's not working. You know? I know. It's like we can't do it for you. It's so true. So 72 out of the 90 days. That's super, super key. The last thing that I want you to think about is fiber. Which is like, why would I say fiber? Calories, look at calories, number 1. Look at protein, number 2. Number 3, fiber. Why? Why do you think I would say that? If somebody is eating a high fiber diet, what does that mean? Are they eating a lot of like processed foods maybe? No. Yeah. If somebody's eating a good amount of fiber in their diet every day, they're eating whole foods. They're eating whole foods. Oatmeal, rice, potatoes, legumes, vegetables, fruit. So a good rule of thumb is 25 grams for a lady and 35 grams for a man. So those are the main things I'd look at. I would calculate your calories, I would look at your protein every day, and I would keep an eye on that fiber number. And that's just gonna be an indicator of, I'm eating good quality food. I really like to suggest 80-20. If 80% of our diet comes from whole, real foods, lean proteins, chicken, bison, beef, venison, all those things, whole carbs, rice, beans, quinoa, oatmeal, your fruits, all your veggies, and then your healthy fats, right? If that's 80% of your diet and the other 20 is pizza and cheeseburgers and donuts, go for bad. Yeah, that's awesome. That's balance, We might find certain days when we're super busy. Maybe we're super busy and we're on the go and it's more processed than other days. That's okay. That's not a big deal. But again, if our mainstay is those whole, real foods, that's what really matters. Any questions on that? Feel good? Everybody has their camera off, but hopefully they got it. Okay, let's talk about performance nutrition. So again, this is primarily, we are talking about the open. Most of us will be doing the open on Friday night. For a lot of people, thinking about like a competition or maybe a swim meet or a game, or I just had the opportunity to talk to the Shattuck girls. Like a lot of their games are early or practices early. So the timing of day that you are kind of fueling for does matter. But I'm gonna give you kind of the principles. And this is something I was just telling Steph before we started. I love this part of my job when people are running marathons or doing triathlons or doing competitions. What we do is we look at, number one, the type of event that they're in. How long is it? Is it a 4-workout competition? Is it 2 days? Is it 1 day? What are the workouts? How long is there in between? And we will literally give you a broken down plan of what to eat when, starting Wednesday the week of. Like we kind of start tweaking things the week of. So it's just super fun to geek out over these things. And some of the feedback that we've gotten is, we had one athlete a year and a half ago who had done a lot of competitions and always done really, really well, really successful athlete. And he goes, I finally feel like I have done everything within my means to perform my best. He never once in that competition felt like, I just didn't have what was left. He felt like he had done his best. And that's a really cool thing to know, that your nutrition is so on point that you really are just showing up and being your best. So if we talk about the open, first and foremost, get up that day, and you should do this every day. Every single day, the first thing to go in your body should be water. Drink 8 to 10 ounces of water. And in the words of Sarah, she's like, if I don't drink my water before my coffee, I'm not drinking any water till noon. That is truly what happens. I'm the same way. I mean, I will drink 2 cups of coffee and realize I have not had an ounce of water and it's noon, So start your day with water. It's a really, really good habit to be in. It gets everything flowing. Even warm water is really great. If a lot of people are like, I need coffee to poop. Warm water will do wonders. Just FYI, if you wanted to know. Okay, other thing. So also Linnea passed out at a volleyball game because she was dehydrated. You can't just hydrate the day of a competition or the day of hydrate all week. Make sure you are well hydrated. Everything is ready to roll, right? Grease the groove. Secondly, nothing new on race day or comp day. Nothing new the night before either. So a lot of times people are like racing, they're in a new town, they're like, hey, let's go out for Indian food. No, we do not need diarrhea the day of our race. So just think about that. I mean, it's not, I know it's fun, it's a new place, you want to try new things, but really don't do anything new. The other thing people will do is, I got this new pre-workout, and I'm gonna be flying, and then they feel terrible. They feel terrible. So don't use new protein, don't use new pre-workout, do not introduce anything on the day of a competition, the day of a race, or the day of the open that you haven't already done. Okay, so 1 hour, I prefer an hour and a half, so 90 minutes to 2 hours before we want a 2-to-1 ratio. So we're looking for 20 to 30 grams of protein and 40 to 60 carbs. 90 minutes to an hour and a half. So if you were gonna sign up for our slots, if you sign up for a 5 o'clock slot, I would say by 3, you should be enjoying a 2-to-1 ratio. Sorry, no, this is wrong. Carbs to protein. Right, you can see by the math. I just wrote it in the wrong order. Twice as many carbs as we have protein. Okay, so that's hour and a half, 2 hours before our workout. The day before, so if the open is Friday, on Thursday, or your competition is Friday, your race, your game, whatever it is, it's Friday or maybe Saturday, the day before, I want you to kind of eat a few more carbs. So if typically you're hitting your protein goal, you're hitting your 150 grams of protein every single day, and maybe your carbs are falling at like 40%, which is pretty typical, I want you to up your carbs by 30 to 50. 30 to 50 more, so it's not crazy. So many people like run a marathon and they're like eating all the pasta. They're eating the whole plate, and that's fine. I mean, that's more power to you, but you don't really need that much. A slice and a half of bread, I mean, a bowl of oatmeal, like that's the amount of extra carbs. So eat what you normally would in a day and have that much extra. 2 slices of bread, something simple. If you want to have pasta for dinner, have pasta for dinner. Have some extra rice. But about 30 to 50 extra carbs the day before. Here's why. The glycogen in your muscles, what you are using in that open workout, what you're using in that race is from the day before. 24 to 48 hours is what you're actually pulling from. That's the truth. Why? So then why do we fuel 90 minutes to 2 hours before if we're not actually using that in our workout? What do you think? Recovery. It's true. Honestly, we're starting the game off for recovery. Yes. Also, blood sugar. Like nobody wants to enter. I mean, you know how it is when you hit a workout and you're hungry or you're feeling lightheaded or you just don't feel like you have all the oomph. That it can typically be blood sugar dysregulation. So making sure that your blood sugar is balanced, this combo is gonna be really, really solid for that. So what are good pre-workout snacks? What do you guys do for pre-workout? What do you like?
Fuel for fire.
Yes, yeah.
Applesauce.
Applesauce.
Noodles with Italian dressing.
Noodles, okay. I love it. Sweet potatoes with some sort of protein, right? Rice, chicken and rice.
Oatmeal, bananas.
Oatmeal, yeah, that's solid. Dates, love it. Cliff Bars. Greek yogurt with dry cereal. What? Swedish, yeah, honestly, yeah, some gummy bears with a protein shake, like that can be, so if we think about that, there is no better time for you to eat simple carbs than before and after a workout. This is the ideal time to enjoy simple carbs. And the reason is you want them to be accessible. You want them to be immediately accessible. If you're burning up glycogen in your muscle and your muscles run out, our muscles store 250 to 400 grams of glycogen in a day. Like that's about max. If you burn through that, you can restore it based on what you have in your system. Simple carbs is what we want. So intra-race or intra-comp, yeah, gummy bears, Swedish fish, fruit snacks. The other thing that I really love, you can't even read this, I'm so sorry. Cyclic Dextrin. Who has heard of this? Yeah, it's branched cyclic dextrin. It's not pure sugar. It's even more simple than pure sugar. It doesn't actually spike blood sugar. So that's kind of the ideal. It's available like sugar, but it doesn't actually raise insulin the way that sugar does. If you were to take, so Steph's used this, Chad has used this, GlycoDrive, I don't know if you've ever used that. GlycoDrive is a brand. What's the Yeah, Supercarb. Supercarb from NutriBio. What was IN3's called? I can't remember. But you can get it on Amazon. Talk about like the best pre-workout you could ever do. Half a scoop of protein and a scoop of cyclic dextrin. It feels like jet fuel pre-workout. It's so good. Like I reserve that for a rare occasion, but it is good. So it is a great pre-workout. You don't need the caffeine. It's 5 o'clock at night, people. Don't be doing pre-workout at 5 o'clock at night. Did you hear that? No pre-workout, Lori, at 5 o'clock at night. We don't need the caffeine. Go ahead.
So is that something you would do 9 minutes to 2 hours before workout?
Yeah, you absolutely could. You could do that. Yep, you could do a scoop of protein in your cyclic dextrin. Let's think about post-workout. We're fueling. We're actually already eating in recovery. The rule of thumb used to be 30 minutes. That you had to get in that protein and that carb within 30 minutes. Like that was even when I started educating myself, like that was the rule of thumb. In the last 2 years, they've conducted 5 huge studies. And actually what they found is it's not really key. 30 minutes is not the magic window, but 5 hours. If you can get in, it actually is about twice this. 50 to 60 grams of protein and twice this number of carbs within 5 hours of your workout, you are perfectly supporting strength, performance, and recovery. So let's say you work out, you do the open, you've had lunch, which is solid. It's probably gonna count in that 5 hours. You're also gonna do a pre-workout, and then post-workout, you're probably gonna have dinner or a snack after. That's really solid. You're gonna get that in. But that 5 hour window is what is really ideal. Now, for those who work out in the mornings, who don't eat anything before you come work out, breakfast is really important. Also, lunch, right? So eating breakfast and getting lunch in a timely manner, that's your 5 hour window because you're not gonna get it on the back end, So things to think about, especially if you have like a comp, it's important to fuel after. When we talk about what is good post-workout, it's the same thing that's perfect pre-workout. The same things, simple carbs, clean proteins. What I would suggest is trying to stay away from fats. Stuff when we were talking about street food, maybe before a game, nobody wants to do burpees after cheese curds. That sounds terrible. So why? Why does fat make you feel sluggish? What? Yes. Yeah, it's hard to digest. It's very slow digesting, and that's the benefit to it. That's why people in keto, whatever, they're satiated a long time because it takes a long time to digest. But that's not what we want. We want everything to be quick and bioavailable pre and post to immediately aid in that recovery. So try to stay away from fat. Make sense? Okay. I don't know if I should share this part or not, but I always feel like I'm not being truthful if I don't. Fruit, I love fruit. Fruit is a phenomenal carbohydrate, and I hate it when people are like, you shouldn't eat fruit, it's too high sugar. Shut up. No, fruit is so good for you. However, fruit is stored in the liver. Fructose, right, the sugar, carbs from fruit is stored in the liver. Our liver can store about 100 to 150 grams of glycogen. And that's not actually what we can pull from in a workout, okay? Your body can store, 400 to 550, somewhere in there, grams of glycogen in its muscle. That comes from potatoes and rice and quinoa and oats and those things. So it's not, don't stop eating fruit, but if I'm being honest, try to find a better pre or post. Enjoy your fruit away from your workout if you want optimal performance. Makes sense? Dried fruit is the only thing that's a little bit different than that. It's got not just fructose, it's got some higher that your body will draw from. So that's the only caveat there. So, okay. Let's talk about alcohol. How about like post-workout carbs from beer? I enjoy a beer post-workout if you want to have a beer, but no, like those are not going to actually aid in your recovery. So if you want to actually aid in recovery, have some other carbs. Enjoy your beer, do what you want to do, but it doesn't actually help. When we're in that fight or flight mode, CrossFit is intense. It's that very glycolytic, it's that high pathway. And have you ever noticed it's hard to like fall asleep after you work out? You don't want to work out and go home and sleep an hour later. You're buzzed, you're wired, you're hyped up. That's your central nervous system, like in that fight mode. Carbs flip the switch. Carbs flip the switch to recovery. So really do try to get in some sort of carb. If you're, maybe you hit your calories for the day, you came and worked out and all you have left for dinner is protein, I would say you might need to go over your calories to get some carbs in, because I'd rather see your body start recovering and be a little over in calories than you hit your numbers and your body go to sleep in that fight mode. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's important. How about amino acids or BCAAs? Is that anything people have heard about, BCAAs? Well, I get asked about that all the time. They're like, they're so good. Branch chain amino acids are the simplest form of those proteins, and they really can be solid. However, if you're eating enough protein, if you're tracking your food and eating enough protein on a daily basis, you're just wasting your money. You don't need them. But most people don't eat enough protein. If you're not literally tracking every bite that you eat, you could do BCAAs, and it might be a solid option for you to make sure you're getting in enough of those amino acids. They can be a really great intra. Maybe you do them pre-workout, maybe you do them in your workout, you sip on them with a little bit of that Cyclic Dextrin. Super solid, super solid. How about what type of protein is best? There's actually, this week I'm gonna come out with a full post about it, but to be honest, the best type of protein pre and post workout is your whey isolates. They're the quickest digesting, they're the most bioavailable, they are just king when it comes to building muscle and recovering muscle tissue. A lot of people who have dairy allergies can do a whey isolate because the lactose is removed. So that's kind of interesting to note. Whey isolate can definitely spike blood sugar. It's very high glycemic. So if we're maybe doing a smoothie in the morning, I would say find a better option. Use maybe like a pea protein, maybe use another type of protein, but if it's pre or post workout, your whey protein isolate is gonna be key. It's not to say that the others, I don't use a whey isolate, I will use a vegetarian, and that's solid if I supplement. It's still a really solid option. Think about whey, it's almost like taking a gallon of water and dumping it in a little glass, and it's just like you're dumping it so fast, everything is spilling over. It's so fast, it penetrates the cell so quickly, there's actually a lot of spillover. It's okay, it's not a big deal. The others are slower digesting, and so they in turn will absorb, you will actually absorb more of them, but it's not as ideal pre and post because it's not as fast. So good whey protein isolate, pre and post. But if you have a dairy allergy or for some reason that doesn't sit well with you, don't do that. Do something that sits well with you, Or vegetarians don't want to do whey. So there's lots of great vegetarian options as well, The other great thing about whey is typically you don't have carbs with it. It doesn't take up other macros. Whereas my vegetarian protein is like 14 carbs, so you gotta factor in some carbs there and there's a little bit of fat. So those are all things to think about.
pea protein is better than a whey protein?
It depends on the person. It's slower digesting. If you're throwing it in with some spinach and some fruit, maybe half a banana and some pumpkin seeds and some chia seeds, it's gonna digest slower because of all the fiber you're putting it with. If you're literally just drinking a protein shake, nothing else in it, I would argue that another one would be a better option. So it depends on the situation, yeah. Casein protein, have you guys heard of casein protein? Yeah, casein is super slow digesting. It's the protein that's like in cottage cheese. So if you had a late night snack, cottage cheese would be a great option. Your body is able to absorb and digest all those amino acids in a much slower manner, so it benefits more from it. So again, it's always one of those, it depends. It depends on the situation, but all have their place. Main thing is, again, remember, nothing new on race day. Like, don't be going trying new things and have upset stomach or diarrhea, and then you're all sad because you feel poopy. It's no good.
That casein protein, you said it's at the best time of season, right?
Night. Yes, it really is. Yeah. That's it, you guys. That's really what I had planned for you. What questions do you have? Any questions?
What about creatine?
Creatine. Oh man, you're so right. I didn't even put that in there, and I should have. I would say, arguably, next to protein supplementation pre or post, one of the most important things that you could supplement for performance. There's so much data behind it. It increases your VO2 max. That's the main data, is known performance in VO2 max. 2 or 3 more burpees is what that could translate to. Yeah. Now we're talking. Now I'm interested. It's also been shown to, like maybe a couple more pounds. When it comes to power and exertion, it almost lowers your body inhibition to that and raises that threshold. So strength gains, but really aerobic gains is where there's the most data. So creatine is super solid. Thing to keep in mind, a lot of creatine talks about loading it, preloading this. You don't need to do that. Just hit 10 grams every single day, be consistent with it. That's all you need to do. Make sure you're hydrated, especially in the summertime. Creatine requires a lot of water for it to be available in the way that it needs to be. And if you are dehydrated, it will only make it worse. So make sure you're really well hydrated if you're using creatine. And ladies, sometimes ladies are nervous about it for making them bulky, or guys don't like it because they feel like you're not as lean. I have not seen that to be the case. It does swell the fibers in the muscle a little bit, and that's why it has that wrap. None of us are, like bodybuilding competitors, where I know, Christy's so sad that I said that. But it's nothing that I've ever noticed. So I've only heard really, from clients who've never done it and incorporated it, they've only seen really good results. So micronized creatine, monohydrate is a really good rule of thumb.
Is that usually a powder?
It's a powder. Yep.
Fish oil.
Fish oil is solid as well. I mean, there's so much research in that too, for sure.
What's the rule of thumb? If it smells fishy, it ain't no good. That's what I heard.
Is it, as far as it being a good quality? Our good quality supplements have never smelled fishy, and you don't burp fish. But like mackerel's really good for you, and that smells real fishy. But from a supplement standpoint, probably. I mean, you should keep it in the refrigerator. But fish oil can be fish oil is also known to increase VO2 max, just like creatine. Those two things are the two supplements that have a lot of research and data that show they make a big difference. They increase blood flow, meaning they thin your blood a little bit, and so in turn, it increases oxygenation, more burpees.
Can you speak a little bit about alcohol and macros?
Oh, well, I know. We'll probably talk about that more next time, and here's why. Because I didn't teach you guys how to calculate your macros. We figured out how to calculate protein. Next time we chat, we're going to talk about macros, and we'll probably talk about alcohol more. But just like I said, post-workout, alcohol, we're going to teach you how to track it as a carb, but it doesn't really count. It doesn't count for recovery, and it really doesn't count for fuel. We just have to factor it in, because if you have health or weight loss goals, it counts when you drink it. So that's the main thing, is it doesn't count for like energy when it comes to workouts or recovery, but it counts for calories. So we have to factor that in.
So
Yeah.
you talk about goal protein, is there like a goal for carbs?
Yes, but I swore I wouldn't talk about this stuff. No, here's a good rule of thumb. Honestly, 40, 30, 30. 40, 30, 30. So if you were to take, let's say, 190 times 12, what is that, Chad?
I don't want to phone anymore. What is it, Eric?
Two two eight? 2280. Okay, and can you do more math for me? We need more math. So we've got 20, that's our goal calories. So let's go times 30%. We're gonna figure out protein.
684.
684. Divide by 4.
171.
How much?
171.
171. Okay, that's our protein number. 684 divided by 9. 76. That's our fat number. And then take 2280 and multiply by 40%. And divide by 4? 228. Okay. These, I would say, would be the close to, 76. 171 protein, 228 carbs, 76 fat. I would say would be ideal macros for this person. And here's why. We took the realistic 30% for protein. A really good rule of thumb for CrossFitters, 40%. 40% of your calories should be carbs if you're a CrossFitter. Yeah. And then 30% is what is left over for fat. So that's super solid. Super good rule of thumb. 30, 30. You're gonna up the carbs on that a little bit? That's fine. I mean, I have CrossFit athletes who their fats are almost 50%. Like, they really thrive well on high fats and they perform super well. And here again, that's where you are different as an athlete. Just mess around with it. But for fat loss, all that matters is protein. But that's a really good rule of thumb for carbs. 30, 30, 40. Cool, you guys. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Do you have questions, Jackie? Do you have any questions?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, I appreciate you joining us. Good to see you, Dawn and Lori and Michelle. Really nice. Thanks for coming. All right, you guys, enjoy Recovery WOD. I will end the meeting. We'll send out the recording of this tomorrow. Have a good night.